we're starting with, oopsie, we're starting with the shorts you cut, the leftover legs. This is what we want. Okay, first thing we're gonna do is find the seam, this guy right here. We're gonna cut along the seam so that it opens up flat on both sides. I have no idea. So, doesn't matter which side, just start cutting along the seam. It'll be easier if you do it here. Alright. So, now you have them both done. The next step is that we're gonna cut this piece off right here. And this is gonna be the band that goes across the back. To show you. So here's one that I've already started. So this is what it's gonna end up being. Ideally, you're not cutting through the seam, but you probably end up doing it a little bit. I did. But we're gonna reinforce it with a zigzag stitch anyway, so it doesn't matter. Nice. So it's always helpful to start with one that you like the shape of or that you like the fit of. Usually I would recommend using pattern paper, but who has that? I literally just used printer paper, traced out the shape, size I wanted. So now I could just use this to cut anything. Here it is cut. That is correct, sir. Yeah, okay. So this is what it looks like. And basically you want to leave extra room for the seam because you're going to sew here and then you're going to flip this piece inside out, which is then going to give you this one. This one has a pad in it already, but you get the idea. See how it shrinks. So you have to account for that seam space. That's called your seam allowance. So what we're going to do is take one of these and fold it over in a way that fits into that pattern so that on both sides when you cut it there won't be any like empty spaces or one side's bigger than the other. So you want to ideally leave as much fabric as you can just in case you make a mistake and you want to have extra. And then you just place your pattern on and cut. Also important, so keep the outside of the leggings, so like the side that faces out, and this is the side that faces your skin. So you want the outside to be on the inside for this part because we're going to flip it back around. And just matching these up so that I can cut it all at once. And then I just usually put like 1 or 2 pins in to keep it in place while you cut. For cutting, I highly recommend actual fabric scissors. Anything else you're going to want to rip your hair out, but they will work, of course. So now you got extra fabric. In case you need it or want it, whatever you fuck up, as I often do. I also have not fully planned this out. So here is almost all the parts. We're going to do a zigzag seam along here just to reinforce it since we just cut it. Then we're just going to do regular stitch up here. The reason for the zigzag stitch is it allows it to stretch without ripping a seam. If you just did a straight seam, it would snap the thread, which is very thin, obviously. This is generally the stitch you're going to want for a lot of athletic stuff. So what I'm going to do to make it easier, because this corner is unnecessary, I'm going to match these up again. Then this piece here, doesn't matter which way it is, we're gonna put it in here. And it's gonna go through, and you're gonna sew this side of it, but you don't wanna sew this side. You can leave a little sticking through if you want, doesn't matter. And then just making sure that you don't sew this side of it by accident. You can like tuck it under. So then we're just gonna sew here to here, stop, here to here, stop, flip it inside out. Boom, you got a sports bra. So for this one, I am just gonna do a straight stitch because this part's not really gonna be stretching a lot, and I'm more going for stability and really reinforced so that it can handle a lot of wear and tear. So just pull it back out. This is going to be where the neck strap goes. So now we've got this piece, and I personally like these. I know most people don't, but I put them in. And then I sew it in so it can't come out in the washing machine. And I'm cool with that because it's better than flashing my nips to the entire gym. But that's just me. So you do you, friend. Here, what's gonna happen now is that we're gonna have to close it from the outside when we connect it to this piece. So again, you don't have to do that. If you wanted to, you could leave a larger opening up here and close it up here, which is what a lot of clothing manufacturers do. But because I'm connecting these two pieces here anyway, I didn't mind doing it here for the sake of less seams. And that's it. All I'm doing here is closing up the back strap by connecting the two pieces. And again, we're working with it inside out so that when you flip it back around, the seam is invisible. We connected the two pieces. You can either trim this off and finish the edge, or if you want a little more support, you can sew it onto the back like this, which is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna trim corners so that they don't stick out. And then again, I'm going to do a zigzag stitch here since this is an area that will be stretching. And here's what it looks like. So for this part, you're going to want to try it on to size it and to make sure that these are covering where you want them, and then you can just pin it from there. Next step is to connect these two pieces. I ended up saying to do them this way instead of crossing them over. So I'm just gonna sew those together and then trim the corners. And then try it on before cutting this off, just in case you didn't measure it quite right. Here's what it looks like when it's stitched in the front, just one seam down the center. And then what you can do too is you can put reinforcement on seams if you want to make them more stable. I just kind of leave them a little blocky, and that usually does the trick. The last step is going to be to make the neck strap, which is going to attach here and go up around. So it's going to be like a halter. So you're going to take the leftover fabric from the leg. Doesn't matter which piece, which direction, but you're going to fold it over and make the thickness of the strap that you want. I'm going to do mine probably a little bit thinner. It's like just shy of an inch. And keeping in mind that we are going to be sewing it up and around here, so it's actually going to be a lot thinner than what you're cutting. And if you really want to be lazy, just take any flat surface. I'm just late for the gym, so I'm rushing because I do want it to be a bit thinner. And if you really want to be exact, you can always double check yourself like that. So I'm going to do a straight stitch to start, and when I inside out it, I will probably add a zigzag. You do want to be careful cutting the seams because when it's this thin and you're pulling it back right side out, it is likely that you might tear the seams. So you want to make sure you leave enough that it's not going to just come apart. And then this part's a little bit tedious, but you can use a pen, you can use a pin, you can use, I like to use a seam ripper, and I'll kind of just like dig it out a little bit. But if you're not careful, you can rip the fabric doing it that way. So the safest way would just be to use your fingers. Or scissors. So at this point, you can reinforce this if you want. So I'm folding that over, folding it into itself. And then I'm just gonna pin it. But again, you don't need to do this. You could leave it as it was. I just want it to be as sturdy as possible. And then I'm just gonna sew it once I'm done pinning. Now we can attach. So I'm just going to be shoving it into here, basically. Gotta like pull it apart while also shoving the piece in so that the fabric is folded over also, if that makes sense. There we go, I got it in. Once it's in, it's not gonna fly out. So once you get it in, it's pretty secure. And then you can try and match it up as best you can. It's not going to be perfect, but that's okay. So what we'll do to close this up is make as straight of a line you can, and then we're going to make a seam along here, and then I usually like to do like a little triangle of sorts to really lock it in. And then once I sew this side, what I'll do is try it on and measure it for the other side and do the same thing.